for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In 2019, Representative Raskin didn't think a House vote was needed for an actual impeachment inquiry. And to quote Representative Raskin, he said in 2019, there's no formal constitutional or statutory or even the House rule for how an impeachment inquiry is to begin. And so it means different things to different people. I don't want to hear another word from the left or anyone across the other side of the aisle about impeachment inquiry. This is complete and total hypocrisy this morning. Today, we're going to bring the facts. Today, we are going to bring the evidence. In 2017, the Joe Biden family teamed up with Chinese company CEFC to make millions off of granting access to Joe Biden. Hunter even arranged for Joe Biden to share office space with the CCP-aligned company CEFC. My Democrat colleagues say none of this is relevant because Joe Biden wasn't vice president while his family did these shady deals. Turns out that's complete and total bullshit. It's a lie. Hunter Biden referred to access to his father as the keys to his family's only asset. Those words are going to come back and haunt Hunter Biden and his family forever. Yesterday, the Ways and Means Committee released an FBI memo on the interview they had with Tony Bobulinski, a former Biden partner in crime. I'll read a bit of that right now. The work conducted by CEFC, Gilliar, Walker, Hunter Biden, James Biden, and Yee over the preceding 2 years was discussed in detail. In particular, CEFC was closing significant investment deals in Poland, Kazakhstan, Romania, Oman, and the Middle East during this period of time. Period of time is in reference to the years 2015 and 2016, when guess what? Joe Biden was vice president. As an aside, Rob Walker, in previous testimony, also confirmed that Joe Biden attended a meeting with the head of CEFC. So now we know CEFC was working with the Biden family while Joe Biden was vice president. And I'll continue reading from Tony Bobulinski's report, which says, and I quote, Bobulinski, Hunter Biden and James Biden did not receive compensation because Joe Biden was still vice president during this time period. There is a concern it would be improper for payments to be made to Hunter Biden and James Biden by CEFC due to its close affiliation with the Chinese government. Hunter Biden and James Biden both wanted to be compensated for the assistance they had provided to CEFC's ventures. In particular, they believe CEFC owed them money for the benefits that accrued to CEFC through its use of the Biden family name to advance their business dealings. The Bidens, coincidentally, were paid over $1 million by CCP-affiliated Chinese company CEFC shortly after Joe Biden left office as vice president. Now we know why, because it was back pay. I'm going to show another image. This is a text message between Hunter Biden and Gong Wendong, an agent of CEFC. Hunter says, my uncle will be here with his brother, in all caps, who would like to say hello to the chairman. He goes on, Jim's brother, if he's coming, wants to say hello. His uncle's brother. I wonder who that could be. I can't quite figure it out. Hunter puts brother in all caps, and it doesn't take a genius to figure this out, but since I'm not always dealing with geniuses, and Washington, D.C. has been illustrated today, I'll spell it out. The brother of Hunter's uncle, Jim, is Joe Biden. Why was Hunter so secretive about his father? I'm going to tell you why. It's because Joe Biden didn't want the American people to know he and his family were getting paid millions and millions of dollars from a company closely tied to the Chinese Communist Party. CEFC knew paying Biden family members was bad, so they covered it up. Hunter knew Joe Biden hanging out with CCP businessmen would be a bad look, so he tried to pull a genius move on us with this whole my uncle's brother bullshit. We already know the president took bribes from Burisma. I also want to add, betraying your country is treason. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record this text message between Hunter Biden and Gong Wendong and the FBI memo regarding their interview with Tony Bobulinski, showing Joe Biden's connections to CFC during his vice presidency.
Without objection, so ordered.
Professor Turley, we got 30 seconds. In your experience in reviewing cases of fraud, do people who are conducting legitimate business usually go through these efforts and hoops to keep their foreign entanglements hidden?
Yes, the issue with influence peddling is that it can, in some circumstances, be legal, but it's not something that necessarily is made public. The public does not buy into the idea that you can sell your family brand if it's influence peddling. So what happens with influence peddling is that you often have the commission of crimes that conceal it and to take steps so that it's not public. That may include, but it's not necessarily the reason in this case, but it may include the failure to pay taxes, the failure to register as a foreign agent. And part of the purpose of an inquiry is to see if there is a linkage between those acts and, more importantly, a linkage to the president. Can I briefly respond to the earlier attack? You may have additional questions. I don't want to take your time.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, the gentlelady's over time.
Okay.
But we'll work with you on that because I do seek recognition.
Will you go and yield?
Chairman.
The chair recognizes Ms. Green.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to talk about the importance of Hunter Biden obeying his subpoena and some of the evidence that we had questions about today when we had arranged with Hunter Biden and his attorneys for him to come in. Then he evaded his subpoena, and there's serious evidence that needs to be discussed. That has to do with many of the bank reports that we had read in the Treasury, outlining very serious crimes that Hunter Biden had committed or has allegedly committed. And then we have evidence of that. Crimes of Mann Act violation, human trafficking, these were in the bank reports, and the American people deserve to know about it. Here's another excerpt from a bank report.
Mr. Chairman, what is
talking about a victim in California.
Hold on one moment, Ms. Green. State your point, Mr. Goldman.
what is the gentle lady just showing to the cameras?
This is her 5 minutes on your amendment.
Well, if it's the suspicious activity reports, there was an agreement with the Treasury Department that the committee would not disclose the information.
It's my understanding what she's showing has already been disclosed in the public long before we started this investigation.
So this is in the public domain?
Yep.
Yeah.
Wait,
Is that your representation?
is it a verbal representation? It's in the public domain?
This is in the public domain. I reclaim my time. Victim one is a California resident currently employed with FSS Management between June 2018 October 2021. Victim one, Hunter Biden's victim, was employed by Owasco PC as evidenced by her receipt of bi-weekly payroll remittances from Owasco PC. However, during this same period of time, victim one also received large round dollar wires from Owasco PC, which reference new hire, K-wage, 10K golf member, and pay. Victim one received 5 wires totaling $44,508 in a 4-month period between June 12, 2018 and October 2nd, 2018. These are reports that are calling so-called employees of Hunter Biden and his law firm victims. And here's evidence of Hunter Biden violating the Mann Act. This is trafficking women across state lines for prostitution. This is an airplane ticket showing that it was purchased by Hunter Biden for this victim, where she flew from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C., and then the next day flew back to Los Angeles. The date is she flew in from Los Angeles on June 14th, 2018, and was flown back to Los Angeles the following day. And this is pictures that Hunter Biden had produced and uploaded to porn websites, and it's marked
Mr.
out.
Chairman, point of parliamentary
out,
point-
showing
point of
proof
parliamentary inquiry, Mr.
proof
Chairman.
of Mann Act violations. Democrats should not be
Okay.
offended by pictures
Mr.
that
Chairman,
black out.
Have I been
things.
recognized?
They should be
I have
offended
a
by
point of
actual
parliamentary
human
inquiry.
trafficking.
Mr.
Sorry,
Chairman,
state your point.
thank you kindly, Mr. Chairman. On July 26th, I sent you a letter about the last time this happened, when the gentlelady introduced before this committee, without any notice to anyone, nude photos, pornographic images that were completely irrelevant to the purpose of the hearing itself. And my question to you is, are members allowed to simply put up sensationalistic, voyeuristic, pornographic images if they're not relevant to the actual object of the legislative proceeding? I want a parliamentary ruling on that.
Mr. Raskin, that's probably part of the questioning for Mr. Biden, violations of the Mann Act. Ms. Green's led on that issue.
No, this is a
These
question
are
of
already,
the rules
these
of the
have already,
committee.
these pictures have already been entered into the record.
So in other words, you have accepted the idea that members can introduce irrelevant,
I don't-
sexually based,
How
voyeuristic.
is this irrelevant?
How
does it relate to Joe Biden?
How does it relate to?
We're not doing
well-
a criminal investigation of Hunter
No,
Biden.
we've
Point
had
of order, Mr.
several
Chairman. Point of
people that
order.
have testified in the FBI, DOJ, IRS, that they were told to stand down investigating various crimes of the Biden family.
Okay.
Did Joe Biden tell them to stand down? Who told the IRS, the FBI, and everyone else to stand down? This is what we're investigating.
None of
Reclaiming my time, Mr. Chairman.
I believe it's my time.
No,
I'm reclaiming
no,
my
I have
time.
been
All right, drop the clock.
I object.
You're good.
I object to the use of this exhibit, Mr. Chairman. This is not a criminal investigation of the Mann Act or prostitution or anything else. It's completely irrelevant to a subpoena, the validity of that subpoena, and whether or not there's been compliance with that subpoena. It's totally extraneous, immaterial, and irrelevant. And someone should explain that to Ms. Green if she doesn't understand.
Point of
This
parliamentary
is,
inquiry.
and let the chair rule. You had a point of order. The chair's rule.
I
This
object
is
to the use
evidence.
of this-
You objected. We got that. Evidence that Hunter is a material witness in this investigation.
Well, does that mean you can put up pornographic pictures of other people that Hunter Biden has met in his life? I mean, come on. Like, how far does that go? It's not relevant to your motion.
You can ask him that in the
It's
deposition.
not relevant. I mean, no, honestly, Mr. Chairman, it's not relevant to your motion of whether or not he violated that subpoena. How did those naked pictures have been?
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
This is not the Jerry Springer
That's your
show.
point.
This is the United States House of
And
Representatives.
let me
Come
say
on.
this.
Talked
Let
about
me
a
say
bunch of
this.
things
It's
today
not
that weren't
pornography. It's appropriately censored evidence in an ongoing investigation.
Yes.
Okay? It's appropriately censored evidence in an ongoing investigation.
Censored-
Mr.
All right, I
Biggs
just want to
raised
say,
the point.
pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 17, I object to the use of this exhibit as irrelevant, extraneous, sensationalistic, voyeuristic, and totally antithetical to the legislative purposes of this committee in this House. This is not the Jerry Springer show. Yield back.
Chair recognizes Mr. Biggs for a point of order.
Thank you.
Your clock stopped, Ms. Green.
Yeah,
Ms. Green has 2 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, this information is extremely important because Hunter Biden refused to obey his subpoena, and we are holding him in contempt of Congress for doing so. This is important evidence of human trafficking, Mann Act violations that we had questions for the president's son about. And there's evidence. I'd like to show the evidence of payments. These are payments made from Hunter Biden and his law firm to so-called assistants. These were not assistants. These are prostitutes that he was trafficking. And I think these victims are important. And just because our Democrat colleagues don't like the evidence doesn't mean that it's not relevant. And I'm especially offended by the women on this committee that don't care about these women's rights. They're victims of Hunter Biden. Here's another excerpt from bank reports talking about victims. These are banks, and these banks are identifying these women as victims. Victim 2. Talking about victim 2, victim 1, each appear to be in the adult entertainment industry and are receiving payments from Hunter and Owasco PC. It is unclear what relationship Hunter or Owasco PC have with these individuals. And based on public media, it appears possible the payments may be associated to prostitution or adult entertainment services. Victim 2 is a New York resident and employed as freelance. Per internet research, she is a social media influencer and adult entertainer. She received 6 quick pays for $6,250 from Hunter between 3/29/2018 and 11/20/2018. This is clear evidence, Mr. Chairman. These are important questions we have for the president's son pertaining to Mann Act violations.
From Ohio.
Thank you. Professor Gerhardt, it wasn't just a speech. He leveraged $1 billion of American tax money, and he did so at a time when our government was supportive of the prosecutor. Here's what our government said. The Assistant Secretary of State, we have been impressed with the ambitious reform and anti-corruption agenda of your government, written to the Prosecutor General, who Joe Biden leverages our money to get fired. The United States fully supports your efforts to fight corruption, she further wrote. The Interagency Policy Committee said this on October 1st, 2015. The IPC recommends moving forward with a third loan guarantee to Ukraine in the near term. And even after Joe Biden gives the speech on December 9th, the European Commission said, their report said the anti-corruption benchmark is deemed to have been achieved for Ukraine. But the most telling evidence is what his business partner said. Devin Archer, when we deposed him under oath just 2 months ago, said this. Here's the question. The request was help from the United States government to deal with the pressure they were under from their prosecutor. You know what Mr. Archer's response was? That's correct. Next question. What did Hunter Biden do after he was given that request? He called his dad. That's what we're investigating. That's one of the three things Professor Turley talked about, the influence peddling scheme. I want to go to those three things, Professor Turley. False statements, influence peddling scheme, and Joe Biden might have benefited. Let's do the third one first. Is a benefit to your family, can a benefit to your family be a benefit to you?
It is. There's been repeated statements that you need to show that President Biden accepted direct money in order for this to constitute a benefit, even under criminal cases that deal with bribery, extortion, the Hobbs Act. The courts actually have rejected that. They've said that money going to family members is in fact a benefit. And I don't really see any legal basis for that. Obviously, the strongest case is if you have a direct payment. But this idea that you can have millions going to a politician's family and that's not a benefit, I think is pretty fallacious.
Yeah, how about the false claims thing? In your written testimony, you said to the extent that the president has used the White House, I think this is a little broader. To the extent the president used the White House staff to maintain false claims or resist disclosures, it can fit into the type of Nixonian abuse of power model. We know all kinds of false statements have been made by the White House. Joe Biden's made them. He said it was a lousy question when they asked him, have you ever been involved, talked to any one of your son's business partners? We know that was false. Ron Klain said, the president is confident his son didn't break the law. Press Secretary Jen Psaki said, never spoke to his son about his overseas business dealings. What do you think about all those false statements from the White House in this abuse of power issue?
Well, the involvement of White House staff and executive branch staff has been really one of the tripwires that we saw in Nixon, to some extent even in Clinton. The degree to which you enlist support for a false narrative or to obstruct Congress can go into things like abuse of power. One of the things that I suggested is that if you look at past impeachment inquiries, and once again, this is an inquiry to find evidence, you're not voting on articles of impeachment, those allegations tend to develop last, and you look at what you have found.
Yeah, how about the Attorney General? I'm concerned about statements he made. March 1st, 2023, in front of the Senate, he was asked a question about Mr. Weiss's investigation. He said this in response to Senator Grassley. Mr. Weiss has full authority to bring cases in other jurisdictions if he feels it's necessary. Last week, the Attorney General told us that Weiss had the authority because I promised him he would have the authority if he asked it. That seems to me to be something different. It's what he said to the Senate, he's got full authority, no problem. Last week, he told the House Judiciary Committee he had authority because I promised if he come talk to me, I would give him the authority that I already told the Senate he had. Do you see a concern there with false statements coming from the Biden Justice Department?
Well, there is a concern. You don't have to prejudge the evidence to say that obviously this is part of the inquiry. And what I don't understand is the opposition to the inquiry itself It seems to me the test is, would the alleged conduct, if proven, establish impeachable offenses? And is there a credible basis for those allegations? I think the answer is clearly yes, that there is a basis to look at the president's conduct without prejudging whether that qualifies at the beginning of that inquiry as an article of impeachment.
And let's be clear, you don't need a full vote of the House to proceed in an impeachment inquiry phase of our constitutional duty to do oversight. In fact, the Democrats did it. 4 years ago, I was in an impeachment deposition run by Adam Schiff in the bunker in the basement of the Capitol, and I went to the floor. So I'm in an impeachment deposition, and I went to the floor to vote on opening an impeachment inquiry. They did the same darn thing because you have that authority as a Congress when the Speaker of the House makes that designation.
The Speaker, Nancy Pelosi, did in fact initiate the impeachment. In some cases, then you have a later vote. I've said in my testimony, I consider that the best practice to have a vote of the House. But the court that was referenced earlier looked at this and said that the Constitution does not require resolution. Actually said if you look at all the impeachments, often there wasn't a resolution. That doesn't mean it's not a good practice, but the Constitution itself does not require such a resolution.
Thank you, gentlemen. Time's expired. Chair now recognizes Mr. Lee. You've already had your share of evidence.
Are you
Now,
admitting
Mr. Donalds, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dubinsky, I want to come to you quickly. A lot of talk about evidence. On the screens in the room, we have an organizational chart from the IRS investigative team that was looking into the business practices of Hunter Biden and his associates. This org chart is from 2014. Now, Mr. Dubinsky, when my former life, I was in community banking, and I'm comfortable with looking at organizational charts. When I first saw this chart, the first thing I thought about was a real estate holding company or a developer, and this is not to demean developers in the great east state of America, but developers typically have multiple companies that float with various business interests and business lines. But the funny thing is that in the business dealings of Hunter Biden, there is no real estate. None at all. So, Mr. Dubinsky, in your professional experience, looking at this organizational chart of business structure, what do you see here?
I see a very complicated structure of entities that are interrelated and would give me concern. If I were an investigator, I would want to know what's going on in these entities, who's behind them, how's the money moving between them, and what is the substance of the transactions? What's really going on here?
Mr. Dubinsky, do you think it's in the interest of this committee that is now in an inquiry phase to actually find out all of the flow of money between these entities and what the purpose was?
Absolutely.
Next slide, please. For my colleagues on the other side, we're going to start talking evidence now. This is now a slide of the organizational chart of the Hunter Biden business companies and with associates from 2018, from the same IRS investigators who were broke down the business structure in 2014. Does this slide cause you the same concern, Mr. Dubinsky?
Yes, it does.
Okay, now let's talk about some more. Actually, one point I want to make on this. Ladies and gentlemen, and I know it's kind of small, so I will submit all this for the record. I would love my colleagues on the other side to see this. In 2014, one of the key owners was Devin Archer, who did testify, was under deposition under oath by the Oversight Committee. In 2018, Devin Archer is no longer listed, but his wife, Krista Archer, is now listed. Mr. Dubinsky, when you see a situation where ownership interest moves from one spouse to the other, is that a concern of some level of fraud potentially?
I would call it a red flag. That's something I would look at and again, try to get to the bottom of what happened there. Was it just transferred? Was there money behind it? What was going on?
Okay, thank you. Next slide. Now, this is to a text message. This is a text message between, it's going to Naomi Biden. That's what this one is. Hold on, let me get my stuff back. There we go. Sorry. This is the WhatsApp text message between Jim Biden and Hunter Biden. In this text message, it clearly says, anyway, we can talk later, but you've been drawn into something purely for the purpose of protecting Dad. This is between Hunter Biden and Jim Biden. Last time I checked, the father of Jim Biden and Joe Biden is now passed away. So I'm assuming this is Hunter Biden saying to Jim Biden, the president's brother, that you've been brought in this for the sole purpose of protecting Dad. Miss O'Connor, Do you think that this text message would lead this committee to get further information about the business dealings of Hunter Biden and how that actually links to Jim Biden, the president's brother, and why they are so concerned with protecting Dad, aka Joe Biden, aka the president of the United States?
Yes.
Thank you. Next slide, please. This is a text message between Hunter Biden and Naomi Biden. And this one is a famous one. Everybody knows this one. This is a famous one that says, I hope you all do what I did and pay for everything for this entire family for 30 years. It's really hard. But don't worry, unlike Pop, I won't make you give me half your salary. Mr. Dubinsky, if you saw a text message like this in a potential money laundering operation or a potential pay-for-play operation, would you be looking for information related to money going from son to father?
Absolutely, without a doubt.
Thank you. Next slide. Oh, this is a fun one. Ladies and gentlemen, this one is from 2018. This is about 4 months before Joe Biden launched his campaign for president of the United States, December 2018. The highlight is, this is a text message between Jim Biden and Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden was in a bad way, by the way. He was really strung out. He lost a bunch of money. He needed help. Jim Biden says, this can work. You need a safe harbor. I can work with your father alone. It'll probably take several months and everybody can read the text. Ms. O'Connor, Mr. Dubinsky, if you saw a text message like this between the president's brother and the president's son, wouldn't you be concerned about them trying to give plausible deniability for the president of the United States to not have any knowledge of said business dealings?
It's worth
Gentleman's time's expired, but please answer the question.
investigating.
Mr. Dubinsky?
I would agree.